So, in true Murphy's Law fashion, we recorded the podcast yesterday morning. Joel and I, of course, laid that down. I did all the editing. I get it uploaded and out on all of our platforms. And what happens 1 hour and 20 minutes later? Well, Kevin Biggio gets DFA'd. Spencer Horwitz gets the call up to the big team. And Alec Manoah is officially out for the year. So, here I am doing a Saturday emergency podcast. Yesterday's game got me so riled up. I need to rant to someone. Joel is unavailable. I even reached out to Mr. Adam Mack to see if he could spare 10 minutes. He couldn't. So you're dealing with me, but I got to get this off my chest. Yesterday's game was brutal. Now, it's not like the lack of offense we saw yesterday was anything that us Jays fans aren't used to. But my goodness, after watching the performance that Chris Bassett put up, absolutely incredible. 8 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned run, 2 walks, and 7 Ks. To take that and throw it to the wayside like the Blue Jays did yesterday was a tough one to swallow. 5 hits, folks. 5 hits. A few things stood out. George Springer looked god awful, just completely uninspired at the plate, 0 for 4, and not even competitive at bats. That's what was frustrating. The Blue Jays had 10 ABs and against Hogan Harris on fastballs last night. Hogan Harris is a dude who throws 85% sliders, and yet the Blue Jays could not hit a fastball to save their life. Those 10 that he threw were middle quadrant, and they were 0 for 10. The Blue Jays see more fastballs than any other team in the major leagues. This is a game where success is based around being able to hunt fastballs, and the Blue Jays just can't do it. They are the worst team in baseball when it comes to hitting fastballs. They can't catch up to them. I don't know what the solution is, but my God, is it frustrating. So we're going to see Spencer Horwitz in the lineup today. It was encouraging to hear from John Schneider that the plan is to get this guy into the lineup as many times as possible. I know that was the big holdup on why they hadn't called him up yet. This is a dude who leads AAA in doubles. He has an on-base percentage of .450 and is probably going to see some time at the top of this lineup. I don't know if it's going to be the leadoff spot, but I think in the top 5 is pretty safe to say we'll see Spencer Horwitz slotted in there. 29-year-old Kevin Biggio, a mainstay with this Toronto Blue Jays team over the last 5 years, has been DFA'd. Now, it's a little more complicated than that. I know I had a lot of my buddies texting me last night being like, they couldn't get anything for him in trade. And I think what it breaks down to is they just couldn't get much in return. And so rather than go through the process of trying to find a landing spot for Kevin Biggio for a low A prospect you're crossing your fingers on, that's a lottery ticket, what they did was they were going to option him down to AAA because he had options left. But as soon as you've got 5 years of major league experience under your belt, you have the ability to turn down being sent to the minor leagues. And then you are going to be exposed to waivers. And if there's a team out there that would like Kevin Biggio, then a trade will be worked out. So the Blue Jays are going to get something in return for Kevin. It just won't be very significant. This is going to be similar to what happened with Genesis Cabrera last year in St. Louis and the Blue Jays swooping in and grabbing him. I think the Jays wound up sending, and I should have looked this up, but it was a ball catcher or something like that they had moved, a low-end prospect. So we'll probably see something like that in return for Kevin is my guess. 29 years old at this point. I remember the first time I saw Kevin Biggio play live, and the boys and I had gone down to Denver Coors Field. This was May of 2019. I remember the Raptors were on their run at this time, and it was more interesting for us to try and find places to watch the basketball than the Blue Jays at that point. We did go see all 3 games, obviously, in Denver. It was a fun experience. Coors Field is beautiful, but Cavan was really the only thing worth watching on that team. And this was before the rest of the league had adjusted to him and he was taking walks like crazy with a 400 on base percentage. And we were all very excited that maybe we had the next Ben Zobrist. Of course, it didn't work out that way. Cavan Biggio in 2024 team ranks. This is all according to Fangraphs. Offensive value, he was 6th. Base running value, 5th. Fielding value, 6th, and WAR 7th. So definitely not a primary guy in this lineup, although ahead of George Springer, ahead of Bo Bichette, ahead of Kiermaier, Clement, Turner, and Vogelbach. So I think it was just the redundancy of what Cavan Biggio is. I think how well IKF has played this year definitely had something to do with this decision. And Biggio hasn't been a good hitter for a while. There's no clear-cut right or wrong move here. We are talking about a guy, after all, who has had 6 plate appearances over the last 10 games. They weren't playing Cavan. So can they bring in a fellow lefty in Spencer Horwitz who is going to play more and produce more? I mean, it's worth a try at this point because I'll tell you what, this offense has been god-awful to watch. Career-wise for Cavan Biggio, a 7.4 wins above replacement. That's over almost 1,500 ABs. He has 336 hits and 48 home runs on his career, a career batting average of 227. All of his stats are low this year. He hasn't played a lot, like I said, a 200 batting average, 2 home runs, 22 hits, and a .4 WAR. Spencer Horwitz, and again, like I said, the good news is John Schneider came out and said they are going to try and find a place for this guy in the lineup regularly. So hopefully he's playing almost 100% of the time so that we can really see what Spencer Horwitz is. I'm still choked over last night's game and the complete lack of offense. So if Spencer can, my God, just come up big every once in a while, I think it's going to be helpful to what we're seeing in Toronto right now with this Blue Jays team. More big news hit yesterday. Of course, right after Joel and I called it a podcast. We got it all up and running, and then this news dropped as well. Hello and welcome, everybody, to the walk-off. This is our emergency pod. I'm laying down by myself because I've got a bunch of stuff that I got to get off my chest here. So you, the grounds crew, are helping me do that. Alek Manoah, it was announced that he's going to undergo UCL surgery June 17th. So the exact procedure is to be determined. Is this going to be full-on Tommy John surgery? It very well could be. It could be one of those they repaired the brace type of thing. Either way, he is out until next season. Starter Sunday, probably going to see Trevor Richards in that starting position again into Bowden Francis like we saw last week. Yariel Rodriguez is still down in Buffalo. I'm actually going to be covering the Bisons on Tuesday and Wednesday. Tuesday is Yariel's final rehab start is what it's looking like. So they're trying to get him up to 70 pitches. So I'll write an article and keep everyone posted on Twitter as to what exactly is going on with Yariel there, at Walk Off Podcast on Twitter to follow along. And we just need to cross our fingers and hope that the Blue Jays can manage to get through this season limping through with the lack of starting pitching depth. I mean, we are well aware that Ricky Tiedemann was supposed to be that first insular layer, right? A guy who is incredibly highly touted, top prospect in the Blue Jays system, or he was actually. Baseball America just came out and Orelvis is now ahead of him. And I think that stems from the injuries that Ricky has dealt with. Bowden Francis just coming off injury here. He wasn't quite as good as we were hoping he would be. Yariel Rodriguez has been excellent in his debut, or at least league average is what you were hoping for, but he's on a pitch limit. They can't expect a ton of innings out of him. He didn't even throw. I shouldn't say that. Of course, he was on a throwing program and looking after his arm and all that, but he didn't throw to professional hitters all of last year. He was in Japan in 2022, contract dispute between him and his team. He missed a full season before the Jays wound up grabbing him in free agency for $32 million over 5 years. So this first year here is really going to be about building him up and making sure that he stays healthy and gets used to pitching to major league hitters, which is kind of a bummer at this point because they really need innings, and they need innings out of anybody. So if Alek Manoah is going to miss the rest of this season, and depending on whether it's full-on Tommy John surgery or the brace, either way, he's going to miss time into next year. He could miss almost all of next season, which is putting the Blue Jays in a spot where they are going to need to go out and get a starting pitcher. Yusei Kikuchi is a free agent at the end of this season, and the way that this season's going, they're probably going to wind up moving him at the deadline, whether it's for prospects or maybe somebody who can help this team in the future. So you look at 2025, they've got Barrios under contract for a couple more years. They've got Gausman until 2026. They've got Bassett for one more season. He's a free agent at the end of 2025. You got your three guys. You're going to need to go get somebody. I don't know if Ricky Tiedemann's a dude that they can count on, especially with how injured he has been. You're going to need to build the kid up again next year, right? You're going to expect 100 innings out of him maybe? He hasn't thrown enough to ramp him up to that 150 to 175 innings that you would need out of a starting pitcher. So where the Blue Jays go from here, it is going to be interesting. But yeah, some pretty big news landing yesterday with both Cavan being DFA'd and Manoah being announced that he is getting surgery and not going to be available for at least 8 months. But we could see him on the shelf for the rest of this season and next year. We might not even hear the name Alek Manoah until 2026, which is really a shame. It's wild. And now the Blue Jays are in this precarious spot where they need to cover innings. It's disappointing. Let me know what you're thinking. Drop in the comments where you're at. Are you disappointed to see Cavan Biggio go? This is a dude who, even at the lowest points of his career, was part of that hope that this bloodlines regime that they were building would work out, and it's looking like it's not going to. I mean, yesterday was pretty telling. I don't know what we all expected, but we were hoping for more. Even as I watched the game and it was 1-1 going into the ninth, I'm like, here we go again. This is a team that is going to win or lose a 2-1 game because they can't score. And expecting anything different from this cast would be kind of crazy. So I'm really glad they're doing something. They probably waited too long to bring Horwitz up, but here we are. Give the kid a chance. Again, I'll be in Buffalo on Tuesday and Wednesday. Follow along on Twitter at Walk Off Podcast. I'll update you all on where Yariel Rodriguez is at. Hoping to also sit down with some of those Bison players that we could see in the near future. Oralvis Martinez being one of them. I know he'll need a translator, so we'll see what we can do. My Spanish is bad. So nonetheless, though, it's good to see the Blue Jays doing something, anything, because things are bleak, folks. Cheers. Thanks for tuning in to the Emergency Pod.